everyone. I'm Michael Holmes in Atlanta, and we are following major breaking news for you. Iranian media reporting several explosions near the city of Isfahan. Details still coming in, but a U.S. official confirming to CNN this is Israeli retaliation for Saturday's Iranian drone and missile strike on Israel. The official says the target's not nuclear. Iranian state media report the country's air defences have been activated in several provinces, and flights to and from a number of major cities have been suspended. CNN's Alex Marquardt is live for us this hour in Washington, but we begin with Nick Robertson in Jerusalem. Nick, I know a lot of caution already because what we don't know is far greater than what we do know, but what have you been hearing?
Yeah, what we're learning from Iranian state media is that they turned on their air defense systems because there were some objects in the sky, possible targets in the sky. They have said that they later saw drones, 3 drones in the skies above Isfahan. But Iranian state media is really talking more about the situation after the explosion of those drones, or whatever happened to those drones, because it isn't entirely clear from Iranian state media. What they're saying it is important to note is that all the facilities around Isfahan where these drones were seen are in fact secure. They say important to say that the nuclear facility near Isfahan is entirely secure. Iranian media is also reporting that it was an army base that may have been the target. Other Iranian media reporting that it potentially was a radar site, and that windows in offices around that facility have been blown out. I think what we're also understanding from Iranian media is playing this down, playing the situation down, talking about quadcopters when they're talking about drones. And of course, these are the really tiny little drones that fit in the palm of your hand. Now, this is not the official government line as best we can understand at the moment, but the overall impression that's being created by the Iranian government and other media outlets in Iran is that this whatever events have happened, and they do leave it rather ambiguous, it has not damaged significantly any important facilities near Isfahan and are playing down the type of attack. I think it's worth noting here that while or after they switched on the air defenses in Iran, they shut down Tehran airport, Isfahan airport, Shiraz airport as well, and closed the airspace in the west of Iran. But state media is reporting that they have not had any aircraft, any enemy aircraft come into Iranian airspace. So again, minimizing, it appears, what has happened. Of course, there is so much that we don't know at the moment. We do know that US officials say that Israel has struck back at Iran, but we don't know from Israeli officials what has happened. The IDF is telling us at the moment that they have no additional comments to make. So perhaps until we begin to get clearer satellite imagery of these sites and compare and contrast with 24 hours ago, we won't know the extent of the damage on the ground. And one other thing worth noting, there were reports in the overnight hours of explosions in some other Iranian cities. Again, state media indicating that this was just air defense systems activated. The overall impression, again, that this has not caused any major disruption in Iran. That's the picture being painted by government and local media there.
All right, Nick, thank you. Alex Marquardt in Washington, I know you've been on the phone. What have you been hearing about, how big or measured this attack is? What are U.S. officials telling you? How worried are they about, what comes next?
Well, they've been telling us all week at how frightened they are at the prospects of what could come next if Israel did decide to undertake this counterattack against Iran, which has now come. I spoke with a senior U.S. official earlier in this evening who made it clear that this response by Israel was not endorsed by the United States. The U.S. did not give the green light for what we saw play out tonight. Now, throughout the course of the week since that massive Iranian strike against Israel last weekend, some 300 ballistic and cruise missiles as well as drones being targeted at Israel, the U.S. has repeatedly said Israel, of course, has the right to defend itself. It has the right to respond, but they certainly did not want Israel to risk escalation. What we have heard from the Biden administration is take the win. They told Israel to take the win, recognize that you defended yourselves formidably last weekend. There was almost no damage. No one was killed in that attack. And that was a response, you'll remember, Michael, to the Israeli strike 2 weeks prior in Damascus against a building that the Iranians claim was a consulate building in which 7 IRGC members, including a senior commander, were killed. So in the view of the Biden administration, the playing field had been leveled. Clearly, Israel did not see it that way, and they felt the need to respond to what truly was a historic and unprecedented attack by Iran. So in the course of the past few days, Israel has been telling the U.S. that they did intend to respond to Iran, but in a limited way, in a narrow way. And what we have reported is that the scope would be quite limited. The expectation would be that Israel would go after military targets. I was told tonight that that nuclear and civilian targets were outside the range of what was expected, and that does indeed seem to be what we have seen play out tonight. Now, when you hear Isfahan and you know anything about Iran and its nuclear program, you instantly worry that perhaps the nuclear facility there was an Israeli target. That was not the case. I was quickly told by a U.S. official that the nuclear facility was not the target. We heard from Iranian officials that the nuclear facilities are secure, but there are a number of other military facilities around there that certainly could be targets and fall within that narrow scope of what the expectation was. I'm told that earlier today, Israel did tell the United States that they intended to carry out in more concrete terms an attack against Iran, but didn't put a terribly fine point on it, put a range of several days. Of course, it came quite quickly. It came tonight. We started getting indications earlier in the evening that this could happen. And then we started to see reports on social media, videos on social media, and eventually it was confirmed by a U.S. official to me not too long ago. I should note, Michael, the Biden administration has not said a word. We have not heard anything either from the IDF or from Israeli officials. But here in Washington, I think what that says is this is firmly an Israeli operation. The U.S. doesn't want to be speaking publicly to this. In case Iran would see it as for example, American participation. The U.S. has made clear that they did not support this operation, and that is really important because should Iran choose to respond, certainly American service members, American diplomats, American assets could be in harm's way in Iraq, in Syria, in Jordan, and elsewhere. And when we heard the foreign minister speaking to our colleague Aaron Burnett several hours ago, he made clear that if Israel chose to respond, that there would be an immediate maximum response, in his words, against Israel. So that is something certainly that Washington is bracing for now, Michael.
Yeah, I wanted to pick up on your reporting that, Israel may have given the U.S. a heads up about this attack, but the U.S. didn't greenlight it, and far from it. What does that say about U.S.-Israel relations? Because, frankly, Israel doesn't seem to be listening to the U.S. these days.
No, they certainly were going against the U.S. wishes right now, but this is clearly something that Prime Minister Netanyahu and his war cabinet felt like they needed to do. We should note that since the Iranian attack last weekend, there were at least, at last count, I believe, 5 war cabinet meetings, which really indicates to us, Michael, that the Israelis were really having a hard time trying to figure out what to do, really hemming and hawing here. And that really does speak to the uncertainty. I'm told by U.S. officials that there was real division among the Israeli cabinet members about what to do, that they really felt the need to respond in some kind of way. So there were a whole menu of options. You know, one thing that we could have seen tonight instead was Israel striking back against proxy groups in Iraq and Syria, and that wouldn't have been nearly as serious as what we're seeing now, which is a direct strike by Israel against Iran, but in a rather limited way. So clearly the hope is here, despite the fact that they're not listening to the U.S. And basically ignoring the U.S. request to not do this, they're not doing it in a massive way. We don't believe that Israel has gone after a nuclear facility. We don't believe that Israel has necessarily gone after multiple sites in Iran. They are clearly, Michael, trying to thread this needle of responding to the Iranian attack, trying to reestablish deterrence, but at the same time hoping perhaps that this does not provoke a massive Iranian response. I think there is the best case scenario, if you will, could be that both Israel and Iran go back to what we had before, which was essentially a shadow proxy war, where you have these covert actions where each side is targeted perhaps in other countries. But clearly we have crossed a line here, and the real worry by the U.S. and its allies is that we could start to see escalations from both sides as the other each tries to establish deterrence over the other, Michael.
Yeah, certainly some red lines have been crossed in the last week or so. Alex Mark right there in Washington, appreciate it. Thanks so much.